So if you spent literally any time on social media right after ChatGPT launched, you absolutely saw the exact same wave of panic that I did, right? Suddenly our feeds were just flooded with these massive job loss predictions and all this really urgent survival messaging. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are unpacking a really fascinating essay by Mohammed Arshad, the founder of PulseLife X, to look at this deeply human reaction to artificial intelligence. We are exploring why the fear around AI feels so familiar and why every generation thinks this time is different.
Hey everyone, it is really great to be here. And that initial wave of panic is just such a fascinating place to start. Because the conversation, it immediately became so binary, didn't it? It was either AI is going to take all our jobs, or you need to buy my urgent course right now to survive the AI apocalypse. But when you step back and really look at this thoughtfully, you realize that the emotional reaction to this technology might actually be older than the technology itself.
Which brings us to a really crucial question, and I think this completely reframes the entire conversation. Are people actually afraid of AI, or are they afraid of becoming irrelevant?
Yeah, that is the core distinction right there. We are talking about a deeply human fear of losing professional identity. Look, most people aren't sitting around losing sleep over how a transformer model processes its parameters. What they are losing sleep over is the idea that the expertise they spent, 20 years building might suddenly just not matter tomorrow. One of those is a technological problem, but the other? That is a crisis of self-worth.
Exactly. And honestly, this reveals a super familiar pattern of technological anxiety. Societies almost always resist new technology at first. Fear consistently arrives way before understanding does.
100%. I mean, think about Kodak. They built the very first digital camera back in 1975, and then they shelved it because they were terrified it was going to cannibalize their film sales. Or think about typewriter manufacturers resisting word processors, or even just the shift from the Walkman to digital music. The initial human reaction to a massive paradigm shift is almost always defensive. We try to protect the way things are, mostly because the new way hasn't really been defined yet.
You can actually see this pattern repeat perfectly throughout history. Take the 1980s, when computers were first being introduced to public administration and banking in India. There were literal protests on the streets. The slogan was Computer Aayega, Rozgar Jayega, meaning computers will come, jobs will leave. But what actually happened? Banking just became scalable, IT became one of India's absolute largest employment sectors.
Right. And in the essay, Mohammed Arshad points this out so vividly by looking back at the late 90s dot-com boom from his own perspective as an engineering student. Back then, every traditional student was being told their field was dead. They were told mechanical engineering was finished. But mechanical didn't die. It merged with electronics, it merged with automation. Every single technology cycle creates this wild mix of excitement, fear, and huge exaggeration. Resistance rarely stops change. It usually just delays our own adaptation to it.
Now, to be totally fair to the panic here, the fear around generative AI isn't entirely baseless, because the velocity of this shift is genuinely unprecedented. Let's look at this number, 100 million. That is how many monthly active users ChatGPT reached in just 2 months.
It is staggering. It really is. That is faster than TikTok. It is faster than Instagram, faster than any consumer application in the entire history of the internet.
When a technology achieves that kind of hyper-adoption, it triggers a societal shockwave. So the anxiety people are feeling right now, it is actually a completely rational response to a totally irrational speed of adoption.
Absolutely. And, it's not just user adoption we are talking about. It's the massive influx of capital. By October 2025, NVIDIA, a company that most people previously just knew for making gaming chips, hit a $5 trillion market valuation. $5 trillion.
Yeah, and that isn't some stock market anomaly. That number tells you exactly what the global technology industry is aggressively spending on AI infrastructure. It proves that the financial velocity here is incredibly real, and it's exactly why financial markets and massive institutions are taking this transition so seriously.
Which leads us directly to the forecasts that are driving all those scary headlines. McKinsey released an analysis indicating that AI could theoretically automate tasks covering 57% of U.S. work hours, and Goldman Sachs estimated 300 million jobs globally are exposed to AI automation. So, 57% of work hours automated, 43% remaining human-driven.
I know, a figure like 57% sounds absolutely terrifying on the surface. It makes it sound like half the workforce is about to just vanish overnight. But we really need to pause here and ask what these numbers actually mean for the future of work. Because the interpretation of the data is exactly where the panic usually starts.
And here is the crucial distinction that I think really diffuses a lot of that scary global data. There is a massive, massive difference between task automation and job elimination. Oh, this is so important to grasp. 57% of work hours automated does not mean 57% of jobs disappear. Let's think about it. Most jobs are made up of layers. You have the repetitive, rule-based work, like scheduling, formatting a document, routing emails, and then you have complex problem-solving and human judgment. Automating a portion of a job doesn't eliminate the human who is doing it, it just clears out those highly repetitive tasks. We also really need to pivot the discussion away from just Western data here, because you simply cannot copy and paste Silicon Valley conversations into markets that have entirely different operational baselines. It just doesn't work.
Exactly. A software engineer working at a Silicon Valley tech startup and a business owner running a trading operation in a Tier 2 Indian city, they are not having the same conversation about AI right now. The Silicon Valley worker is focused on maximizing productivity, optimizing code generation, right? But the business owner in Ludhiana might still be managing their entire inventory using WhatsApp and basic Excel.
To really put that into perspective, let's look at India. 63 million micro, small, and medium enterprises. These MSMEs account for roughly 30% of the GDP, and they employ over 110 million people. They are the true backbone of employment.
Right, and the vast majority of these businesses haven't even completed basic digitization yet. So for this massive economic layer, AI disruption isn't some overnight tsunami that's going to wipe everything out. It's much more like a slowly approaching wave. Adoption is going to be incredibly uneven, and the whole story is going to unfold very, very differently here than it does in the West.
Now, this brings us to a rather uncomfortable reality of basically any technological shift. Whenever there is a gap between a new technology arriving and society actually understanding it, a third group emerges: the people who profit from the anxiety.
Ah, yes, the urgency selling ecosystem. It's the courses that guarantee you'll survive the AI wave if you just pay their limited time fee. But here is the fascinating thing about fear-based marketing. Fear is often so much easier to monetize than clarity. The fear-selling business model literally only works as long as you stay afraid. The moment you feel capable and calm, you are no longer their customer.
So let's cut right through all that fear and look at what actually changes. What does AI handle exceptionally well today? It's highly structured, well-defined, repetitive work. Right, we're talking data processing, documentation, formatting reports, routing customer queries, summarization of those really long meetings, or generating standard code. These are areas where AI creates measurable, highly visible impact. It loves rules and it loves structure.
But let's counter that by looking at what remains deeply human: unstructured judgment, complex negotiation, where the relationship and the unsaid context matter just as much as the actual price.
Yes, and building trust. Crisis response when a situation completely breaks the standard operating procedure. Reading a room. Navigating pure ambiguity. These things are incredibly difficult to automate because they don't rely on algorithms. They rely on embedded context and years of lived human experience.
And this brings us to a highly practical, operational example of the real disruption here. A few years ago, putting together a weekly operational report might take half a day across multiple teams. Today, an AI-assisted system can build that structure in minutes. But notice what actually happens there. The company doesn't necessarily reduce headcount. Instead, the baseline expectation just goes up. If AI saves you 4 hours on formatting, the expectation is no longer, can you make the report? The expectation is now, what strategic insight can you add beyond the report? The real disruption is often rising expectations rather than just straight-up employment loss.
So, what does genuine, grounded adaptation look like for an ordinary professional today? It's not blind panic, and it's certainly not ignoring the technology altogether. It's gradual, practical learning.
Exactly.
Step 1, identify the most repetitive parts of your daily tasks. Step 2, just test which AI tools can actually save you some time there. And step 3, and honestly this is the most important one, invest that recovered time into deepening your domain expertise. Because AI can format a document in seconds, but it absolutely cannot replace 20 years of understanding exactly why a specific client needs to be communicated with in a very certain way.
Ultimately, history teaches us a really clear lesson here. Adaptability has always mattered far more than perfect prediction.
It has. The people who survive and actually thrive during these massive technological shifts aren't necessarily the smartest or the most technical people in the room. They are simply the people who are willing to adjust how they work and who are willing to test new tools long before external pressure forces them to. Discovering the deeper challenge is really just about staying useful.
Which brings us to our concluding thought.
Every single generation believes its technological disruption is uniquely terrifying. We saw it with computers, we saw it with the internet, and now, of course, we are seeing it with AI. But the ultimate realization is basically always the same. The real challenge was never the AI itself, or the computer, or the internet. The deeper challenge has always been learning how to remain endlessly curious, adaptable, and useful as the world quietly changes around us. So as you navigate this AI shift, I want to leave you with this. Are you letting fear drive your response? Or are you going to use this moment to build on the deeply human expertise you already have?